There is nothing you need to do right now. Nothing to remember, nothing to arrange, nothing to become. You have arrived at the end of the day, the very last edge of it, and everything that happened before this moment is already folding quietly away, like a letter being slipped back into its envelope, sealed, set aside on a high shelf where it will wait for morning without troubling you. Whatever your body is resting on tonight, whatever softness is beneath you, let yourself feel it a little more fully now. Feel how it holds you. Feel how it has been holding you this whole time, patient and steady, asking nothing. Let your shoulders drop, just a little, just a fraction, and notice that they were carrying something they no longer need to carry. Let your jaw soften. Let the space behind your eyes go quiet, the way a room goes quiet after the last lamp is turned down. You are going to travel somewhere tonight, not far, not in the way that requires effort or motion, but inward and downward, following a path that begins in the dark behind your closed eyes and winds gently, gently toward a place of deep stone and slow sound, a place where the world breathes and time forgets to keep count. All you need to do is follow the voice. Let it carry you. The way is soft and it goes down, gradually, easily, the way water finds its way to the lowest, most still place it can reach. And it begins here. You are standing at a threshold. It is not a dramatic doorway, not carved or ornate, only a low opening in a pale cliff face, the stone around it worn smooth by generations of slow hands that have touched it in passing. The plateau above you stretches away into a night that is already deep and windless, the kind of night that has settled completely, that has made up its mind about stillness, and the stars overhead are doing their usual patient work, burning at distances you cannot quite hold in your mind, which is fine. You do not need to hold them. They will continue without your attention. The air out here carries the smell of the sea, even though the sea itself is somewhere beyond the plateau's far edge, a long, unhurried walk from where you stand, because the wind that has been flowing over those dark waters for countless years has followed the stone into this place, seeping down through fissures, pooling in the lower passages, finding its way through channels that the mountain itself has shaped over time, slow as memory, patient as salt. You can smell it now, that faint mineral breath coming up from the opening before you. Brine, damp rock, something warm underneath it all, a deep warmth that belongs not to fire, but to the earth itself, to stone that has been holding the heat of old sunlight for so long that it has become its own source. There's a small wooden cart beside you, low to the ground, its wheels smooth, worn, and silent on the flat stone, loaded with the tools of a quiet trade. You can see the soft bundles of felt, the neat row of beeswax tapers in their leather sleeve, a small, stoppered vial catching a faint gleam of starlight, and resting across the top of everything, balanced in a way that speaks of long habit, a tuning rod, slender and silver pale, humming with the faintest potential of its own, not yet struck, but already resonant in some way you can feel rather than hear. You take the handle of the cart. The wood is cool and smooth and just the right weight in your hand, and you step through the opening. The threshold passes over you like a breath. The air changes immediately. Outside was open and salt scattered and free. Inside is something else entirely, closer, warmer, held by stone in a way that feels not confining, but enveloping. The way a valley holds mist in the morning, gently, without intention, simply because that is the shape of things. The passage slopes downward at an angle so gradual you barely register it in your legs. Just a long, easy descent. The smooth floor beneath your feet, pale as old cream. The walls close enough on either side that you could trail your fingers along both at once if you wished. And you do wish. Your free hand drifts to the left wall almost on its own. And what you find there is extraordinary in its smallness. Halite, salt crystal grown directly from the stone. Tiny facets catching the first guttering light of the taper you have lit. The flame is new. It is still finding its confidence, and the crystals are gritty and precise under your fingertips. Not sharp, not painful, but present in the way that very real things are present. Each small face of mineral perfectly formed. The accumulated patience of water and stone, expressed in geometry so small, it is almost secret. You draw your hand slowly along the wall as you walk. The crystals whisper against your skin. The cart follows on its worn wheels, with a sound so soft, it is more of a memory of sound than sound itself. A low wooden murmur, a gentle settling of tools against one another. And underneath all of that, already, even here in the upper passage, you can hear it. The drone. It is not loud. It is not the kind of sound that announces itself. It is the kind of sound that has always been there, that you simply notice, the way you might notice the warmth of a room after you have been sitting in it for a while. The way you might notice your own breathing once something has drawn your attention to it gently, without alarm. The drone is low, very low, lower than most music, lower than most voices, a vibration that lives in the chest more than in the ears, a frequency that the stone itself seems to be producing from somewhere deep and central and unhurried. It shifts as you walk, almost imperceptibly, the way a long note held on an instrument will shift if you listen to it long enough. Not unstable, not unsteady, but alive in the way that sustained things are alive, the way the sea is alive even when it is calm. You follow it downward. The passage opens, gradually, the way dawn opens, the walls easing away from you on both sides, until you are standing at the edge of a chamber that takes a moment to understand. The ceiling is high. How high, you cannot quite say, because the candlelight does not reach that far, and the upper dark is soft and undemanding, and the walls glow, not with fire, not with any light of their own exactly, but with yours, reflected and diffused through curtains of selenite, translucent sheets of the mineral layered over one another, like pages of the oldest book imaginable, each one thin enough to carry light through it, each one tinted the amber of old honey, of late afternoon in a warm room, of the inside of a closed eye turned toward the sun. Your single taper throws its small flame into this amber world, and the walls catch it and multiply it into something richer than the flame deserves. A soft, surrounding glow that has no hard edges, that does not cast strong shadows, that simply fills the chamber with a warmth that the eye accepts the way the body accepts warmth, without analysis, with gratitude. You stand still for a moment, the cart at your side, the tools patient and waiting, and you simply look, simply breathe. The drone is stronger here. You can feel it in the soles of your feet, a faint and regular pulse that is not quite rhythm and not quite stillness, something between, something continuous. The exhalation of the mountain, the breathing out of pressures so ancient that the word ancient does not quite contain them. This is the first gallery, the outermost room of the resonance grotto, where the work begins. You let your eyes settle and travel along the chamber floor, which is almost level here, an old floodplain of mineral-laden water that evaporated slowly, leaving behind a flat white surface that your cart's wheels find welcoming. And you locate the first of the pipes. They are not obvious things. They do not announce themselves. The pipes of the resonance grotto are formed not by craft, but by circumstance, by fissures in the stone that widened over centuries as water worked through them, by channels that the wind found and followed and gradually shaped to its own purpose. And what this means is that they look like what they are, cracks in the living rock, widened and smoothed and deepened until they are passages through which air can move, and, in moving, sing. The low pipes, the ones you come to first, the ones that produce the deepest sounds, run along the base of the chamber walls, some of them barely wider than your 2 fingers held together, some of them wide enough to rest your forearm in if you lay yourself along the floor to look. They are edged with crystal, halite, always halite, that patient mineral, which grows back between tunings, which is why you are here, which is why there is always work to be done. You kneel beside the first pipe. The stone beneath your knee is cool, not cold, not unpleasant, but possessing the particular coolness of things that exist below a certain depth, below the reach of seasonal change. And you bring the candle close to examine the pipe's aperture, the opening through which the air enters and begins its long conversation with the stone. Crystal has crept in, just a little. The growth is slow, the mineral depositing itself fraction by fraction over weeks and months, but enough that you can see, in the amber candlelight, the slight narrowing of the opening, the tiny teeth of crystal along the lower edge that have nudged the pipe's pitch just slightly from where it should be. You know this sound. You have been listening to this chamber all the way down the passage, letting the drone settle into your awareness, learning its texture, its particular frequency tonight. And you have already heard, felt, more accurately, felt in the chest and the temples and the quiet space behind the ears, that this note is not quite where it lives. It is close. It is very close. But close is not the same as true. You reach for the felt buffer, a small square of dense, very soft felt, gray with the mineral dust of many previous evenings, and you begin to work. There is no urgency in this. There is no urgency in anything that happens down here. The felt buffer moves along the crystal growth at the pipe's edge with a motion that is almost a caress, slow strokes, patient, following the grain of the mineral, coaxing rather than forcing, because the crystal is not your enemy. The crystal is simply the grotto doing what the grotto does, depositing its slow wealth in every available space, offering the geometry of itself to whatever will hold it. You are not removing it out of hostility. You are simply adjusting, as you would adjust the wick of a lamp, as you would adjust the blanket that has slipped in the night. A small correction, made with care, returning something to its proper relation with everything else. The felt whispers against the crystal. You work for what feels like a long time, but what time you cannot say, because time here does not have its usual shape. There is no light shifting through a window, no traffic rising and falling outside, no clock, no urgency, only the work and the sound and the amber warmth of the walls, and the deep, continuous drone that underlies everything, that was here before you arrived, and will be here after you have made your small adjustments and moved on. After a while, in time, gradually, you sit back on your heels and listen. The note from this first pipe has changed, only a little, but the change is real. You can feel it in the way the drone settles more completely into the chamber's air, the way it occupies the frequency it was reaching for without quite finding. And you allow yourself a moment of simple satisfaction, the satisfaction of work done well, of something restored to its right relation. You stand. You move along the base of the wall to the second pipe, and the work continues, soft and slow and patient. The second pipe is wider, almost as wide as your spread hand, and runs for the length of the wall before disappearing into the rock. The sound that comes from it is richer, more complex. Not a single pitch, but a cluster of pitches that live together in a chord so low it is almost a color rather than a note. A deep amber-brown resonance that fills the lower portion of the room in the way that warmth fills a room, invisibly, completely. This pipe needs the mineral oil tonight. You uncork the vial. The stopper comes free with a soft, yielding sound, and the smell that rises from it is clean and faintly woody. The oil pressed from something that grew a long time ago in a warm place, brought here to ease the passage of air through stone. You tip a small amount onto a cloth, not felt this time, but a finer cloth, almost silky, worn to softness by years of exactly this use, and you begin to work it along the interior edges of the pipe's upper surface, where the air makes its first contact with the stone, where the dryness has made the tone slightly brittle, slightly harsh. The way a voice goes harsh when the throat is dry. The cloth moves slowly. The oil spreads in a thin, even film. You can see it in the candlelight, just barely, a faint darkening of the pale stone. And the note changes, not dramatically, but in the way that the quality of sound changes when the room it fills is treated with care, when the surfaces that hold and return it are given attention. The harshness eases. The chord from this pipe deepens, rounds, loses its slightly anxious edge, and finds a more comfortable resonance, lower and more complete. You replace the stopper in the vial. You wipe the cloth clean on the felt and fold it back into the cart. You sit for a moment with your back against the wall beside the pipe, feeling the vibration move through the stone and into your shoulder blades, into your spine. Not unpleasant, never unpleasant. A physical reminder that the sound is real, that it occupies space, that it is happening in the actual world of stone and mineral and slow-moving air. Your shoulder against the warm stone, the amber walls holding the light, the continuous drone. You breathe, and it breathes with you. Or perhaps you breathe with it. It is difficult to say which came first, down here where everything moves at its own unhurried pace. There are 6 pipes in this first gallery. You take your time with each of them. The third pipe, finger thin, running diagonally upward from the floor to disappear into the selenite wall, produces the highest note in this chamber, a long, narrow tone that sits above the lower drones, the way a single distant bird sits above the morning, clear and sustained and carrying. It needs the tuning rod tonight, which means something different from the felt work or the oil. It means listening very carefully, bringing the rod close to the pipe's aperture, tapping it once with the soft leather cap on your thumb, and letting the rod's own clear tone, a bell sound, yes, a fading silver ring that travels out into the chamber and returns slightly changed by what it encounters, tell you what the pipe is doing, what it wants, where the slight sharpness in the upper register lives. The rod rings. The sound of it leaves you immediately, fills the chamber for a moment with its one clear frequency, honest and uncomplicated, and then fades. And in the fading, you can hear the pipe's response, the way it picks up that frequency and holds it, deforms it slightly, returns it tinged with its own particular character. You listen to the fading bell sound for a long time. You do not rush the listening. The chamber holds the resonance well, the selenite walls, the high and softly distant ceiling, and the rod's note takes its time dissolving into the drone, like a thread of color dissolving in still water. What you hear tells you that there is a crystal growth inside the narrow channel, not at the aperture you can see and reach, but further back, half a hand's length in, where the channel bends and the water used to pause in its slow migration. You have a small tool for this, a thin wire bent at an angle with a fold of felt attached, and you ease it into the pipe slowly, carefully, with the patience of someone who has done this many times and knows that slowly is the only speed that works here. The felt catches the crystal. You turn the wire gently, a quarter turn, no more, and draw it back, and with it comes a small deposit of crystal, barely visible, smaller than your little fingernail, that was nevertheless enough to narrow the channel just enough to raise the pitch, just enough to put the pipe out of its true relationship with the others. You set the tiny crystal on the floor beside you and look at it for a moment in the candlelight. It is beautiful, actually, every face precise, the amber light catching in it and breaking into something almost like color. You leave it there. It will find its way back into the stone eventually, patient, as all mineral things are patient. You tap the tuning rod again. The bell sound fills the chamber, fades, and this time the pipe sings back at the right pitch, clear and thin and high, a needle of tone above all the low resonance, exactly where it should be. And you allow yourself to simply sit with that for a while, listening to the chord that now exists in this first gallery, all three registers of it, low and middle and high, the drone of the resonance grotto, finding a slightly more complete expression of itself. The cart waits. The tools rest. The candle flame stands very still. The air in the chamber barely moves, this deep from the entrance, though you will feel it again when you pass into the next passage, where the wind from the outer sea narrows and quickens through smaller channels. For now, there's only the stillness and the sound and the amber light on the crystal walls. The fourth pipe needs only a leather wedge adjusted, a small thing, a matter of perhaps 2 millimeters, the difference between a note that is true and a note that is almost true, and you seat the wedge with the soft, definitive thud of felt on stone that is one of the most satisfying sounds in this entire underground world, a quiet thud, like the closing of a very small and very well-made door. The fifth pipe is silent tonight, as it sometimes is. The pressure in this part of the mountain varies with the seasons, and in certain weeks, the air that would normally drive this pipe simply takes another path, follows a lower channel, leaves this pipe waiting without any sense of urgency, simply waiting, as the stone itself waits for everything. You touch the aperture gently as you pass, a habit, an acknowledgement, and move on. The sixth pipe, the last in this gallery, set into the floor rather than the wall, a wide, shallow opening that you have to crouch beside to examine, sounds a long, pleased note as you approach, which means it needs nothing tonight, which means you can simply listen to it, simply receive what it offers, which is a low and generous resonance that vibrates the flat stone beneath your hands when you spread them on the cave floor, a shiver, a pulse, something between sound and sensation, the boundary between the two irrelevant down here, where everything is more continuous and less categorized than it is in the world above. You spread your hands on the floor and feel the pipe sing through the stone and into your palms. You let this continue for as long as it needs to. There is no hurry. There is nothing waiting. The next gallery will be there when you arrive. The pipes in it, patient and unhurried in their small variations from the true. And you will do your work there as you have done it here, slowly, attentively, with the specific satisfaction of someone whose purpose is the restoration of something as quiet and necessary as a chord that no one except the mountain hears. After a while, you gather yourself, lift the cart handle, and move toward the far end of the gallery, where a low arch marks the passage to the second chamber. The arch is lined with selenite so thin it is almost translucent. You can see the shadow of your hand through it when you bring the candle close, and passing beneath it is like passing through a curtain of amber light, the stone giving back everything the candle offers in a diffused and gentle glow that lasts only for the moment of the threshold, and then resolves into the different quality of darkness in the second gallery. The second gallery is narrower and longer than the first. The ceiling is lower here, not oppressively so, but close enough that you are aware of it in a companionable way, the way you are aware of a low ceiling in a room you love, a ceiling that gives the space its particular intimate quality, that holds the warmth and the sound and the candlelight closer to you. The walls on both sides are white, paler than the amber first gallery, the selenite here thinner, the halite denser, and they catch your candle flame in a different way, more directly, with less diffusion, so that you cast a soft shadow, and the chamber has a slightly crisper quality of light. And here you feel the air moving, not dramatically, not as a draft, more as a presence, a slow flow of cool air from some deeper part of the system, channeled through the narrowing of the passage until it is just barely perceptible on the skin of your forearms, on the back of your neck. A very slow, very deliberate movement of air from the mountain's interior toward the plateau above. The long exhalation of the breath of the mountain that gives this whole system its purpose and its name. The drone in this gallery has a slightly different quality. There are more pipes here, and they are closer together, and the result is not a single chord, but something more complex, a weaving, a conversation between adjacent frequencies that creates interference patterns in the air, places where two notes meet and produce a third, a ghost note, a sound that exists only in the combination and would not exist if either contributing pipe were silenced. You have learned to listen for these combination tones over time, to locate them in the room, to understand what they mean about the relationship between the pipes producing them. And tonight, There is one near the left wall that tells you something you will need to address before you leave this gallery. But you do not address it immediately. You wheel the cart to the center of the chamber, set the candle in its holder on the cart's top shelf, and you stand still and listen. Just listen. The combination tone is somewhere between a murmur and a note. It has pitch, but its edges are soft. The way the edges of things seen through colored glass are soft. And it sits in the frequency range that you feel more in the chest than hear with the ears. A pressure and a warmth simultaneously. It tells you that two pipes on the left side of this gallery are very slightly out of relationship. Not badly, not urgently, but enough that the combination they produce is wandering, not staying in one place, finding different ghost frequencies as the temperature in the stone varies through its daily cycle of cooling. You know which pipes they are. You have stood in this spot and heard this particular wandering before, in previous rounds, in previous seasons. And you know that what is needed is not correction of either pipe alone, but a small adjustment to both simultaneously, or rather, sequentially, with careful listening between, the way you tune two instruments, not to themselves, but to each other, not to an absolute standard, but to a shared and agreed resonance. This is the most delicate work in tonight's round, and you approach it slowly, moving to the left wall with the unhurried confidence of someone who has learned that confidence and urgency are not the same thing, that the most skilled attentiveness is the quietest kind. The first of the two pipes is at hip height, a horizontal channel running through the selenite, perhaps 3 finger widths tall and as wide as a handspan, its edges worn perfectly smooth by the air's long passage. You bring your face close to it and feel the air emerging, just barely, just a faint coolness against your cheek, and you listen to the note it carries. There's something almost conversational about this pipe, something in its frequency that sits in the range of a low, thoughtful voice. Not quite a voice, but adjacent to one, the way certain ocean sounds are adjacent to voices, the way wind in the right configuration can seem to have intent. You reach for the tuning rod and tap it softly, the softest possible tap, just enough to start the bell sound ringing, and hold it near the pipe's aperture. The sound from the rod enters the pipe. The pipe considers it, returns something that is not quite the same note, something that is the rod's note filtered through the pipe's own character, its length and width, and the particular grain of the stone it passes through. And what comes back tells you that the pipe is sitting about 1/3 of a degree lower in pitch than you would like it, which in practical terms means that one of the leather wedges at the pipe's far end needs to come out a small amount, not much, perhaps 1/2 centimeter, perhaps a little less. You move to the far end of the pipe, which is at the junction of this gallery's wall with the next passage, and find the wedge, dark and supple, the leather blackened by mineral deposits and long use, and you work it out, slowly, a fraction at a time, pausing after each small movement to listen to how the pipe responds. The note rises, gradually, as you ease the wedge back, giving the aperture incrementally more room. The frequency of the pipe ascends in tiny steps, each step almost imperceptibly small, but each one real, each one audible, if you are listening with the full attention of someone who has been underground long enough to hear in a different way than usual, a way that has become more feeling than hearing. more body than ear. You stop when the note reaches the place where it wants to be. There is a quality in the air when the note is right that you have come to recognize. A slight easing, a loosening of some imperceptible tension in the acoustic space of the chamber. The way a room changes quality when the last, barely visible thing that was crooked is straightened. You turn to the second pipe. The second pipe is lower, at knee height, which means you kneel again on the smooth, cool stone, the halite crystals pressing gently into your knee through the fabric of your clothing, not painfully, just presently. And this pipe is thinner than the first, a more focused channel of air, producing a higher and more defined frequency that is the upper voice in the combination tone you heard from the center of the room. You listen to it carefully. You bring the tuning rod close, tap it once, let it ring, let the bell sound fade into the pipe's response, and hear in that response that this pipe is, in contrast to the first, sitting very slightly high, perhaps the same small increment upward from its true pitch that the first pipe was below its own, which explains the combination tones wandering, two voices slightly wide of the notes they want to be singing, producing between them a ghost that cannot settle. The adjustment here is the opposite motion, a wedge seated more firmly rather than withdrawn, the aperture narrowed by the smallest increment, the note drawn downward toward its proper home. You select a wedge from the cart. There are several sizes, and experience tells you which one, the second smallest, barely wider than your thumbnail, and you ease it into the pipe's adjustment channel with the care of someone placing something fragile on a glass shelf. The wedge goes in. The note moves. And then, gradually, as both pipes settle into their adjusted positions and the air pressure through the system finds its balance, the combination tone finds itself. It stops wandering. It sits. It becomes a single, consistent presence in the acoustic space of this gallery. A ghost note that is no longer a ghost, but something more like a witness. A third voice produced by the conversation of the other two, steady and real and continuous. You sit on the cave floor for a while, your back against the cool white wall, the candle flame standing still above you, and you listen to what the gallery is doing with itself now. The whole of it, the half-dozen other pipes in their unchanged states, producing their own contributions, and the two adjusted pipes now woven correctly into that fabric, and the combination tone sitting like a satisfied agreement between them. The mineral smell of brine and damp rock is gentle here, pervasive without being strong. A note underneath everything, the way the lowest pipe is a note underneath everything, simply always present, the base on which all the other presences rest. You close your eyes for a moment, just for a moment. The sound continues. The stone is warm against your back. The distant drip of mineral water finding a pool somewhere deeper in the system comes to you faintly. A small, regular sound, not metronomic, but almost, each drop finding the surface of the pool below and returning a tiny, bright note of impact that is gone before you can quite hold it, only to return again after a pause, and again, and again. And this small rhythm, so much smaller than the drone, so much more incidental and particular, is one of the sounds you return to in memory when you are far from this place, one of the sounds that means underground, that means deep and still and cared for, that means the resonance grotto in the hours when the surface world is sleeping. You open your eyes, you gather the cart and continue. The third gallery waits at the end of a passage that is lower and more intimate than the one you came through before. You need to move slowly, not because of the cart, which fits well enough, but because the ceiling requires your head to incline gently forward, which produces in you a quality of attention that is different from standing attention, a more gathered, more internal quality, as if the posture of inclination draws the consciousness inward and downward along with the body. The walls here are close, very close, close enough that both hands trailing simultaneously touch crystal on each side, the halite rough and precise and gritty against your palms in that way that has become deeply familiar, one of the textures that belongs to this world and no other. The air movement is strongest in this passage. The wind from the mountain's interior funnels through here before distributing itself through the wider galleries you have already worked in, and what you feel on your face and arms and the front of your clothing is a slow, persistent breath, not cold, not warm, somewhere between, a temperature that matches your own body closely enough to feel like an extension of yourself rather than something external. The way a room that is exactly the right temperature becomes invisible in terms of comfort, simply the medium you exist in without noticing it. And yet here, you notice it because you are paying attention, because everything in this place deserves attention and receives it. The passage hums, not from pipes. There are no pipes in this passage, no apertures or channels in the wall, but from the passage itself, the narrow corridor of stone acting as a resonance chamber for the frequencies traveling through it from the deeper system, amplifying certain harmonics, filtering others, adding its own character to the sound, the way any enclosed space adds its own character to whatever sound it contains. You walk through this passage slowly, and the hum settles around you and into you, and you let it. The third gallery, the Hall of Convergence, the place the tender's log calls the chord room, because it is here that the pipes from all the adjacent galleries meet the central channel and sound together for the first time, opens around you with a spaciousness that seems almost impossible after the closeness of the passage. The ceiling here is high, genuinely high, the highest in the system, a natural vault of pale stone that your candle can only hint at in the upper dark, and the walls sweep outward in a wide oval, the floor smooth and level, and from every direction, left and right, and from the passage behind you, and from the two passages ahead, a dozen pipes open into this space. You stand in the center and simply receive it. The drone here is not one note or even one chord, but a continuous, layered sound weather. Notes and overtones and combination tones, and the long shadows of notes that have gone before, all of them present in the air simultaneously, shifting in their relationships as the air pressure in the mountain changes with the slow warming and cooling of the stone, as the patterns of the outer sea wind vary, as the system breathes. The amber light on the selenite walls is richest here. The walls of this gallery are almost entirely selenite, sheets of it folded and layered over millions of years, some of them as large as doors, some of them barely handspan sized, all of them glowing with the warm, transmitted candlelight in a way that makes the entire vault seem to breathe with warmth, with a living amber quality that is more generous and enveloping than any single lamp should be able to produce. You stand very still and let your eyes move slowly around the room. You have been here many times. You have never stopped being struck by it. After a long time standing, you turn to the work. The pipes of the chord room are mostly true tonight. The stone here is less active with crystal growth, perhaps because the airflow is so constant, so strong, that it keeps the apertures clean. And what you need to do in this gallery is more listening than adjusting. You move from pipe to pipe with a tuning rod, tapping and listening, tapping and listening. The bell sound leaving you each time and entering the pipe's particular world and returning something that tells you the state of things. Most pipes return their note cleanly. The rod's tone and the pipe's tone agreeing with each other in a way that feels right in the body. A resolution, a convergence, two things confirming each other. One pipe, the largest, the one set into the floor of the gallery, and running, as you know from the log, for nearly 30 meters in each direction beneath the stone, needs a small quantity of mineral oil, the same oil you used in the first gallery, applied now to its upper lip with the fine cloth, the stopper coming free with that same soft yielding sound, the woody clean smell rising briefly in the mineral air before being absorbed into the larger smell of brine and damp rock and warm stone that defines this world. You work the oil along the pipe's edge slowly. The cloth moves in small circles. The note from the pipe, already low and generous, deepens very slightly, the way a voice deepens after the throat has been cared for, the way anything deepens when it is given what it needs. You are comfortable here. You have been comfortable here for as long as you have been doing this work. But there is a particular quality of comfort in the chord room that the other galleries do not quite have. Something to do with the scale of the vault, the way it is large enough to not feel close, but complete enough to not feel open. The way the drone here is so layered and so present that it becomes a kind of presence in itself, a companion, a thing that is with you in the room in a way that feels almost social, without requiring anything of you, without offering anything you need to respond to, simply being there as the stone is there, and the amber light is there, and the faint smell of the sea wind is there. You let the pipe do what it does. You sit beside it for a while and let the drone surround you, and let the amber light hold the room in its warm amber way, and let the distant drip of mineral water come and go from somewhere beyond the walls, and let the faint creak of the cart's wood settle into the general quiet, and let all of it simply be what it is. Your hands rest on your knees. The candle flame stands still. The mountain breathes. In time, gradually, as time passes in the way time passes down here, which is to say, slowly and without announcement, you move to the pipes in the left-hand portion of the chord room, the ones that face the deeper passages, the ones that speak to the innermost part of the system and carry with them frequencies that have traveled the furthest, that have been shaped by the most stone, that carry the most of the mountain in their sound. These pipes are the ones that move you most, though you would not say so in the log, because the log is for measurements and adjustments and the dates of mineral oil applications, not for what it feels like to press your ear to the stone beside a 40-meter channel of air-driven resonance and feel the sound pass through the bone of your skull directly, bypassing the ear entirely, becoming simply a vibration in the body that is indistinguishable from warmth. You press your ear to the wall. The stone is warm against the side of your face. Not hot, never hot, but the warmth of something that has been holding heat for a very long time. A warmth that is not burning, but is somehow more significant than burning, more deep-rooted. The warmth of the interior of the earth, transmitted through meters and meters of mineral to arrive, finally, at the surface of your skin. The sound through the wall is extraordinary. Through the ear pressed to the stone, you hear not just the pipe, but the stone itself, the entire rock system of the plateau above you, the weight of it, the slow life of it, the ancient silence of it, populated now by this moving air, this wind that came from the outer sea and found its way in and is using the mountain as its instrument, the mountain's patient willingness to be used in this way, to be shaped into a place of resonance and held chord and continuous long exhalation. You stay like this for a while, your cheek on the warm stone, your eyes closed, the sound in your skull, the amber dark behind your eyelids. This is why you are here. Not only the wedges and the oil and the felt, not only the log and the measurements, and the slow, patient maintenance of something that would otherwise accumulate crystal and lose its truth and gradually fall silent, but this receiving, this being in a place that is doing something extraordinary and simply being present with it, simply being the person who stands beside the extraordinary thing and keeps it in its right relationship with itself. After a long, still moment, you straighten. You lift your head from the wall. The warmth lingers on your cheek. The chord room continues around you, complete and unhurried. The final chambers of the evening's round lie through the passage at the far end of the chord room. Two smaller galleries, close-ceilinged and intimate, their pipes few, but their sounds amongst the most refined in the system. The ones the log records most carefully because their frequencies interact with the chord room in ways that can either resolve or complicate the whole, depending on their state of tune. You push the cart through the far passage. This one is easier than the low tunnel you came through earlier, more height and light. Though the air here is still, and the drone here is quieter, something preparatory about it, something that has not yet fully declared itself, and enter the first of the two final galleries. This gallery is small and low lit. Your candle is lower now, burned a quarter of its length in the course of the evening's work, the flame perhaps a little smaller, but still steady, still amber, still finding the selenite walls and spreading through them in that warm and diffusing way. There are 4 pipes here. You check each one with the rod. 3 are true. The 4th, a narrow pipe at shoulder height, one of the more recently formed channels in the system, its edges still slightly rough, where the crystal growth and the mineral water are still negotiating the final shape of the opening, is producing a note that is perhaps 2 degrees sharp enough to add a slight tension to its relationship with the pipes below it in the chord room, a tension that is not unpleasant exactly, but is not what the system wants, not what the long accumulation of this place is working toward in its slow and patient way. You address this pipe gently. The adjustment is small, a leather wedge, the smallest size, eased in with the careful half-centimeter motion that you have done so many times that the motion itself has become a kind of meditation, a physical expression of the difference between forcing and guiding, between imposing and suggesting. The note steps down, finds itself. The chord that lives between this gallery and the chord room behind you shifts into a quieter relationship. Not silent, not resolved into sameness, but a relationship between two voices that are now in agreement, that are now choosing the same harmonic country to live in, that are now contributing to the same long, slow, layered sound weather that is the breath of the mountain, that has always been the breath of the mountain, that will be the breath of the mountain long after the wedge you just seated has been absorbed by new mineral growth, and someone else, in some other decade, in some other season, comes with their own cart and their own candle and their own patient hands to make the small corrections that keeping things true requires. You are only one of the long line of tenders. You are only the present voice of an ongoing conversation between human care and the mountain's slow, self-expressing life. This is enough. This is everything, actually. The second final gallery is the last. You enter it knowing it is the last, knowing that after this gallery, you will begin the long, slow cart walk back through the chord room and the two earlier galleries to the upper passage and the entrance. And this knowledge does not produce urgency. Nothing produces urgency here, but it does produce a quality of attention that is slightly different from the attention of continuation. It is the attention of completion. It is the quality of noticing that comes when you know something is nearly done and you want to receive it fully before it is finished. This gallery is round, almost perfectly round, which is unusual. Natural spaces do not often achieve this. And the ceiling is domed, and the pipes in this gallery are distributed evenly around the circumference of the walls, which means that standing in the center of the floor produces a quality of surround sound. All the pipes contributing from their different angles, the sound arriving from every direction simultaneously, meeting in the center of the room where you stand and interfering with itself and reinforcing itself in a pattern that shifts as the air pressure shifts, never the same twice, always within the same family of sounds. You stand in the center. The drone surrounds you completely. You close your eyes. With your eyes closed and the sound surrounding you from every direction and the amber warmth of the selenite walls transmitting itself through your closed eyelids as a soft and ambient glow, you stand in the center of this round gallery and you let the sound do what it does, which is to occupy the air completely, to fill every cubic measure of this small round vault with its continuous shifting chord, to press gently against every surface, including the surface of your body, including the surface of your skin, including the boundary between you and the air around you, softening that boundary, making it less definite, making the space between where the sound is and where you are feel smaller and smaller, less like a distance and more like a shared medium. Water that you are both swimming in, light that both of you stand in, something that contains you both without effort. You breathe. The mountain breathes. For a moment that is long and not measurable, there's only the breathing. There's only the sound. Then you open your eyes and look at the pipes around the circumference of this room, one by one, slowly. All are true tonight. All are singing their correct part in the round gallery's chord. Nothing needs your hands tonight. Only your ears, only your presence, only the acknowledgement of the work that is already being done by the mountain itself, by the sea wind, by the stone, by the long, patient shaping of this place over ages that make your own long years underground feel very small and very precious. You uncork the mineral oil anyway, not because anything needs it, but for the smell of it, the woody clean note of it in the brine and rock air, a small human smell in a very large geological space. And you breathe it for a moment with the vial held lightly under your nose. And then you reseal it and set it back in the cart. A small thing, a nothing, really. And yet, you make your way now to the far edge of the round gallery, where there is a ledge, a natural ledge of halite, broad enough to sit on comfortably, its surface worn smooth by the sitting of tenders past, and beside the ledge, set into the wall at precisely the right height, one of the wide, flat-lipped pipes that the evening's last candle is always burned beside, because the air coming from this pipe is the most stable in the system, the most constant in its temperature and its pressure, and a candle beside it burns with the most steady flame in the grotto, a flame that barely moves, that might be a painted flame if you did not know better, amber and soft and almost ceremonially still. You sit on the ledge. You set the candle in its place beside the pipe. The flame adjusts its small biography, wavers once, lightly, as if noticing the new location, and then settles into the particular stillness that this spot always produces. Warm stone beneath you, warm stone at your back. The round gallery surrounding you with its even drone, its distributed and unhurried sound, its chord that shifts too slowly to follow consciously, but that you feel changing, in the way you feel temperature changing, in the way you feel the slow passage of underground time as a quality rather than an event. The cart stands a little distance away. Its work is done for the night. The tools are all in their places. The felt buffers, the fine cloth, the sealed vial, the wedges, the rod, all returned to the order they began in, which is the order they will begin in again, next round, in the next turn of whatever slow cycle governs the work down here. The tuning rod rests across the top of the cart. It is still, but you know it is resonant, has been resonant all evening, absorbing the frequencies of the galleries it has passed through, carrying in its metal a record of the evening's work, a record that no one will read, because metal does not keep such records, because it gives up what it absorbs when it returns to stillness, because everything in this place eventually returns to the same deep, continuous chord that underlies everything and has always underlied everything. You lean your back against the warm wall. The stone holds you gently, the warmth of it steady and real, radiating through your clothing, settling into your shoulders, your spine, the back of your head where it rests against the halite. Your hands are in your lap, open and still, a little salt-dusty from the evening's work, the mineral grit of the crystals still faintly perceptible on the lines of your palms. The candle beside the pipe is very still. The pipe breathes slowly, very slowly. The mineral smell of brine and damp rock is present and gentle and familiar. The smell of this world, the smell that means deep and safe and working, means the mountain attending to itself, means the long, quiet continuation of everything that has always been here. The drone is in your chest now. It has settled there, found the resonant cavity of your body, and taken up its easy residency. And you can feel it, not as a sound, but as a warmth, as a presence, as the faintest and most continuous of vibrations, like the memory of a very large and very distant bell that has been ringing for so long it has become indistinguishable from silence. You let your breath slow. It is already slow. It has been slowing all evening, through all the galleries, following the pace of the work and the pace of the stone and the pace of this underground world where nothing is urgent and nothing ends, and everything is simply tending toward its own most true expression of itself. The way the pipes tend toward their right pitches, the way the crystal grows toward its own geometry, the way the water finds its way to the lowest pool and rests there, adding one small bright drop to all the small bright drops that came before it. Drip. Somewhere in the walls, or the floor, or the passages beyond, the water is finding its pool. You hear it and do not count it. The amber light on the walls, the warm stone, the drone in the chest, the smell of brine and rock and mineral oil and old wood, and the specific darkness of this deep place. All of it present. All of it exactly as it is. You are not going anywhere. There is nowhere to go. The work is done, and the grotto is singing, and the pipes are in their right relationships with one another, and the round gallery holds all of it, and holds you also, with the same patient, unconcerned generosity that stone has always offered to the things it contains. Your eyelids are heavy, not heavy with effort, not heavy with the weight of the day, or the work, or the decisions, heavy with the particular pleasant weight of things that have been completed, of muscles that have been used gently and well, of a mind that has been fully occupied with something small and precise and satisfying, and is now released from that occupation, and is settling like sediment settling in still water, slowly downward, all the suspended things finding their floor. The drone continues. It will continue without you. It has always continued without whoever stood beside it, or listened to it, or maintained it, has continued through all the gaps between tenders, through all the long seasons when no human ear received it, sounding into the empty galleries for its own reasons, for the mountain's reasons, for no reason at all except the reason of the wind and the stone and the shape of things. It does not need you to hear it in order to be. And yet you are here, and yet you are hearing it. And this is the particular gift of the work, that it brings you to this ledge, this warmth, this amber dark, this sound that is too large and too old and too continuous for anything but simple receiving. Let yourself receive it now. Let the drone settle into you the way warmth settles into stone, slowly, deeply, without rush. Let the amber dark behind your eyelids be enough. Let the smell of brine and mineral and warm rock be the whole world's smell. Let the slow air from the pipe beside you be the only breath there is, cool and steady and ancient, moving as it has always moved, in the direction of the surface, in the direction of the outer air, in the direction of the night that lies above the plateau. You do not need to follow it. You are here. The stone is warm. The sound is continuous. The candle is very small now, very quiet. The halite under your hands is cool and precise and real. Drip. The pool receiving one more drop. The drone. The amber. Your breath. Slow and slow and slow. The warm wall at your back, holding you, patient and enormous, and without any need for you to be anything other than exactly what you are. Exactly here. Exactly this weight and this warmth and this gathering quiet. The round gallery, the pipes in their accord, the tuning rod, still, the bell sound of it, fading now, already gone, already only the memory of a ringing, already dissolving into the drone, the way all sounds down here dissolve eventually, giving themselves back to the continuous, giving themselves back to the breath of the mountain, giving themselves back the stone, the warmth, the amber dark, the drone, the sound that has always been here, carrying you now, the way the stone carries everything, slowly, without effort, down and still.